In the heart of Glasgow, a drug dealer stood on the brink of a trial that could unravel a criminal empire until 3 bullets silenced him forever. EJ Johnston, known as EJ, was gunned down in a chilling execution, his secrets buried before they could reach a courtroom. Now, in October 2025, detectives are scouring a lonely urban hillside, chasing a 9mm pistol that could name his killers. Who feared EJ's testimony so much they marked him for death? What dark truths lie hidden in the shadows of Glasgow's underworld, where loyalty is a blade that cuts both ways? And how far will a grieving family go to uncover the conspiracy that stole their loved one? Welcome to Crime Pulse. Today, we delve into the motives, the murder, and the mystery of a dealer eliminated before he could speak. If you're new here, hit subscribe and join our growing community digging into the UK's most dangerous criminal underworlds. Like, share, and turn on notifications so you never miss a case. EJ Johnston, known to many in Glasgow's Maryhill area as EJ, was a figure who left an impression. At 26, he carried a warmth and charisma that made him a familiar face in the community, a man who could light up a room with his presence. Friends and neighbors described him as a devoted father of 2 young children, living with his partner, Danielle Carruthers, who was pregnant at the time of his death. Yet, beneath this outward charm lay a life entangled in Glasgow's underworld. EJ's path was shaped not only by his own choices, but by a family legacy steeped in crime. His father, EJ Johnston Sr., aged 44, had already carved a notorious name for himself. In 2014, police caught him with heroin worth over £2 million in a Partick car park, part of a larger £9 million drug operation. He was sentenced to 6.5 years in prison and was on day release when his son's life was cut short. Like his father, EJ followed a dangerous road. He became involved with a criminal network linked to Roy Duncanson, a Glasgow crime boss operating from Benalmádena on Spain's Costa del Sol. Duncanson's group was a major player in the UK's drug trade, orchestrating large-scale heroin trafficking. By late 2014, EJ's world was closing in. Police were cracking down on Glasgow's drug networks, and Duncanson's operation was in their sights. In December, a raid on a flat in Springburn uncovered a major haul, 4.5 kilograms of high-purity heroin, worth £640,000 on the street, hidden alongside a hydraulic press used to prepare drugs for distribution. EJ, along with his friend Brian McMahon and others, was arrested and charged in connection with this seizure. Released on bail, he faced a trial looming in early 2017, a date that hung over him like a shadow. Meanwhile, the net was tightening around Duncanson himself. Operating from Spain, he coordinated deals using encrypted messages, but his empire was crumbling. A European arrest warrant forced him to flee to the Netherlands, where he eventually surrendered to authorities. In 2015, he was sentenced to 11 years in prison. For EJ, these events marked him as a man caught in a dangerous web, his fate tied to a collapsing criminal network. EJ's life was a paradox, a beloved local figure, a father and partner, yet deeply enmeshed in a world of drugs and danger. His connections placed him at the heart of a volatile criminal landscape, one that would soon claim him. As 2016 drew to a close, EJ Johnston's life was under a growing shadow. Over a year had passed since his 2014 arrest for possessing £640,000 worth of heroin, and his trial was set for early 2017. That looming court date carried weight in Glasgow's underworld, where trust was fragile and secrets could be deadly. For someone in EJ's position, tied to a major drug network, the prospect of testifying, or even the fear of what he might say, could unsettle powerful figures. In a world where loose ends were often tied with violence, EJ's connections made him a target. Glasgow at the time was a tinderbox of criminal rivalries. The 2015 conviction of Roy Duncanson, whose £9 million heroin empire had once dominated the city, left a void that fueled tensions between factions like the Lions and Daniel clans. High-profile killings, like that of Kevin Gerbil Carroll in 2010, had already shown how swiftly grudges were settled. EJ, linked to Duncanson's network, was entangled in this volatile landscape, his upcoming trial a potential flashpoint in a city already on edge. On the night of November 15, 2016, the first signs of trouble emerged. At 10:46 p.m., EJ and his friend Brian McMahon arrived at the Red Pepper Takeaway on St. Andrews Road for a late meal, a routine stop in their evening. Unseen by them, danger was closing in. Around 11 p.m., a black Audi Q5 appeared outside, its driver circling the restaurant in a calculated pattern. Passing by, making U-turns, then passing again. For nearly 40 minutes, this unsettling routine played out, captured on CCTV. The vehicle then pulled onto nearby McCulloch Street, where two men stepped out. They moved toward the takeaway, their eyes fixed on the two customers inside. Oblivious, EJ and McMahon finished their meal and, at 11:39 p.m., climbed into their silver Audi RS4, heading toward Kinning Park. The two men hurried back to the Q5 and the vehicle followed, trailing them into the night. What had started as an ordinary evening was now a countdown to something far darker. Just minutes away, at a set of traffic lights, a plan was about to come to a head. At 11:40 p.m., EJ Johnston sat in his silver Audi RS4 at a traffic light on the Shields Road and Scotland Street junction in Glasgow's Kinning Park. He was on the phone with his partner, Danielle Carruthers, their conversation a quiet moment in what had been an ordinary evening. Beside him sat his friend Brian McMahon, unaware of the danger that had been trailing them from the Red Pepper Takeaway. Without warning, a black Audi Q5 pulled up alongside them. From its rear window, a masked figure extended an arm. 3 sharp gunshots pierced the night. 2 bullets struck EJ's head, one penetrating his brain. The impact was immediate. EJ's foot slipped from the brake, and his car lurched forward, crashing into a bollard with a crunch of metal. He slumped in his seat, fatally wounded. Danielle, still on the line, heard the shots and the chaos that followed, her world shattering in an instant. The Q5 sped off, racing through a red light at the North Street and St. Vincent Street junction, then heading north toward the M8 slip road in the direction of Edinburgh. Emergency services rushed EJ to Queen Elizabeth University Hospital, but the wounds were too severe. He died shortly after arrival. Police cordoned off the busy Kinning Park area, the flashing lights and barriers disrupting the South Side's nighttime calm as investigators began piecing together a chilling scene. Prosecutors, led by Advocate Deputy Alex Prentice, would later call it a well-planned execution, a calculated act to silence a man entangled in Glasgow's criminal underworld. For Brian McMahon, frozen in the passenger seat, and for Danielle, left with only the echo of those gunshots, the night marked a brutal turning point. The streets of Glasgow held clues to what had just unfolded. Now, it was up to investigators to uncover the truth behind this cold-blooded act. In the wake of EJ Johnston's murder, Glasgow's Police Scotland launched a meticulous investigation, determined to piece together the events of that November night in 2016. The killing at the Shields Road and Scotland Street junction bore the marks of a coordinated effort. CCTV footage revealed a team of at least 3 individuals, likely a shooter, a driver, and a spotter, working with precision that suggested a professional hit. Yet, despite their careful planning, the perpetrators left critical clues behind, offering investigators a path to the truth. By the next day, police located the black Audi Q5, the getaway vehicle, on Braehead Street, not far from the crime scene. It had been set ablaze, its charred frame a clear attempt to erase evidence, but the destruction was incomplete. Forensic teams recovered a single 9mm bullet casing from the wreckage, which lab analysis matched to a bullet fragment found in Johnston's silver Audi, linking the vehicles to the same firearm. Another find proved pivotal, a fragment of a Nike Windrunner jacket, a model sold in the UK only since October 2016. DNA testing on the fabric pointed to David Scott, a 33-year-old Glasgow man, placing him at the heart of the crime. CCTV offered further insight. The Q5's license plate was captured, though it turned out to be cloned, a tactic to obscure the trail. The vehicle itself, a 2016 model, had been stolen before the hit, another sign of calculated preparation. Detective Superintendent Paul Livingstone, leading the major investigation team, emphasized the killing's callous nature, executed in a busy public area with no regard for bystanders. Each piece of evidence, the casing, the jacket, the footage, built a picture of a calculated crime, but questions remained about who else was involved and why. With a suspect in their sights and a trail of forensic clues, the investigation now turned to the courtroom, where the weight of this evidence would face its first test. By May 2018, The investigation into Ewan Johnston's murder reached the High Court in Glasgow, where the weight of the evidence converged to seek justice. David Scott, the 33-year-old whose DNA was found on a jacket fragment in the burned-out Audi, stood trial as the alleged shooter. The prosecution painted a chilling picture, a coldly and deliberately executed killing, as Judge Lady Stacey later described it, carried out with no regard for consequences. Yet it was clear Scott did not act alone. CCTV and police evidence pointed to at least 2 others involved in the meticulously planned hit, raising questions about who else shared responsibility. Scott's co-accused, Anthony Ruthven, also 33, faced charges alongside him. A key moment in the trial came from a witness, David Callender, who claimed to have overheard Ruthven confess at a Glasgow apartment party in December 2016. Callender recounted Ruthven's words, "Bang! I nipped that EJ. We pulled up at the lights and I shot him. I was sitting in the back passenger seat and I put the window down and done him." The statement was damning, suggesting Ruthven's direct involvement. But in court, Callender, a 31-year-old with learning difficulties and ADHD, faltered. Under questioning, he retracted his story, claiming he hadn't understood the police during his initial interview and had simply agreed with their suggestions. The reasons for his change of heart remained unclear, leaving the prosecution's case against Ruthven weakened. On May 2, 2018, the charges against Ruthven were withdrawn and he walked free. Scott, however, could not escape the evidence. The DNA on the Nike Windrunner jacket, the matching bullet casings, and the CCTV footage tied him to the crime. The court found him guilty, and Judge Lady Stacey sentenced him to life in prison with a minimum of 22 years, condemning the brutality of his actions. Yet, the acquittal of Ruthven and the absence of other accomplices in the dock left gaps in the story. Someone had driven the Q5 and someone had planned the hit, but those answers remained out of reach. As Scott was led away to begin his sentence, the violence that defined this case was far from over. Behind prison walls, his actions would soon cast a new shadow. David Scott's conviction for Ewan Johnston's murder did not mark the end of his violent path. Behind the walls of HMP Edinburgh, known as Sawton, Scott's reputation as a killer followed him. By late 2019, whispers circulated among inmates that he was a marked man, targeted for retribution over EJ's death. One name stood out, Dale Thomas, an armed robber with loose ties to Johnston's circle in Glasgow's Underworld. Rather than wait for a threat to materialize, Scott struck first, unleashing a brutal assault that revealed the depths of his ruthlessness. On December 10, 2019, inside Thomas's cell, Scott attacked with chilling ferocity. He threw boiling sugar water, a prison-made napalm designed to cling and burn, before slashing Thomas's face with a blade, severing his ear and leaving him in a pool of blood. When it was over, Scott walked away calmly, turning to a prison officer and casually remarking that Thomas might need medical attention. The attack, described in court as savage, sent shockwaves through the prison. Scott was transferred to HMP Perth, but the move did little to curb his violence. Just weeks later, on December 27, 2019, Scott struck again in Perth's visiting room. His target was Paul Lyons, a notorious figure from Glasgow's Lyons crime family, convicted in 2010 for a road rage killing on the M74. Lyons was sitting with his family, including his young daughters, when Scott approached from behind. Pulling a razor blade smuggled from Edinburgh, he sprinted toward the table and slashed at Lyons' head and neck, narrowly missing his carotid artery in an attack that required urgent surgery. As guards restrained him, Scott shouted to the crowded room, "Paul Lyons is a grass and his whole family are grasses." He later asked officers if he had got him good, showing no remorse. His lawyer, Brian McConachie QC, later argued the attacks on Thomas and Lyons were preemptive, driven by a highly charged prison atmosphere where Scott feared for his own safety. In March 2021, Scott faced justice again. For these 2 assaults, he was sentenced to an additional 8 years to run concurrently with his life sentence for Johnston's murder. The attacks underscored a grim reality. Even in prison, Scott remained a dangerous force, his actions rippling beyond the cell block. The murder of Ewan Johnston on November 15, 2016, sent shockwaves through Glasgow, leaving a community rattled and a family broken. The brutality of the Kinning Park shooting, executed in a busy public area, underscored the audacity of the crime. Nearly 9 years later, in October 2025, the case remains unresolved, with Police Scotland's major investigation team still seeking the full truth behind that fateful night. In a renewed push for justice, detectives have turned their focus to a grassy embankment near Soroba Road in Oban, far from Glasgow's urban sprawl. Specialist officers and national resources are combing the area for a 9mm firearm believed to be the murder weapon, a critical piece of evidence that could unlock the case. The search, expected to span several days, has brought an increased police presence to Oban as investigators meticulously scour the terrain for clues. Detective Superintendent Peter Sharp, leading the effort, emphasized the stakes. "We know from our inquiries that there was more than one person involved in the murder of EJ Johnston, and we are determined to bring those responsible to justice." The ongoing investigation reflects an unwavering commitment to EJ's family, who have endured years of uncertainty. Sharp noted that relatives have been informed of the Oban searches and are receiving support from specialist officers during this challenging time. Public appeals have been renewed, urging anyone with information, no matter how small, to come forward. "A significant amount of time has passed since Mr. Johnston's murder," Sharp said, "and we understand that allegiances may have changed over the time. All new information will be taken seriously and thoroughly investigated. The hope is that shifting loyalties in Glasgow's underworld might yield fresh leads to identify the accomplices who evaded charges alongside David Scott." The search in Oban is more than a hunt for a weapon. It's a pursuit of closure for a case that has haunted Glasgow for nearly a decade. As investigators dig through the earth, they carry the weight of a family's grief and a city's demand for answers, determined to bring the full scope of this calculated killing into the light. Thanks for watching today's episode to the end. If you want to dive deeper into true crime mysteries like this one, subscribe to Crime Pulse on YouTube for gripping investigations and untold stories from the underworld. Join our community, share your thoughts, and stay tuned as we uncover the truth behind the cases that shape our world.